All right. Well, enough time has passed, so we're going to get
Okay.
started. I'm going to mute all, and then I'm going to make sure that Dan is unmuted. So I'm going to ask you to unmute Dan, and then Ken, I'm going to ask you to unmute in case you want to say something. You can always change your mind if a dog starts barking in the background or something. And then a little trick that George Hakes told us about is that if you self-mute uh, ever, that you can press the space bar, and as long as you hold that space bar down, you unmute yourself and you're able to talk. Now, George, I muted all, so try that trick, and
It seems to work.
there you go. It even works if you're muted. So if you feel like interrupting and being obnoxious or something, then you can hit the space bar and we can hear your dog bark and your baby crying. But we, of course, prefer you don't do that. So Dan Chiras is with us today. He's going to talk about growing food in your home. And Ken, can you share your screen real quick and show the book and talk a little bit about it? And Dan, you can talk about your book as well.
All right. Well, this is not the actually. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. I thought I better check that. This is not the book. This is the Heartland Renewable Energy website, which is heartlandrenewable.org, which I hope everybody's had a chance to look at over the course of time. And on the homepage, just as soon as you bring up the website, here's Dan's presentation today. And if you scroll down to a little bit further, you can click on this, where it says click here to order your own personalized copy. And it shows the cover of the book. And you scroll down and fill out the info here. And you can order Dan's book, and you can have it personalized, like say, this is a gift for my son, or whatever you want to do. But it's all set up on the website to go. So just if you'd like to get a copy of the book that Dan's talking about today, go to the Heartland Renewable Energy website, look at the homepage, and then click this link right here.
And Dan and Ken, I think that between the two of you, that we ought to figure out a way that we can select more of Dan's books and have them available by clicking a checkbox and saying, yeah, I want to buy all of his books, or I want to buy these two, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
we
you
should
guys,
have a bookstore section on our website, and I can talk to Dan about this. I'm sure
yeah,
Dan has no problem with us selling other books besides the ones he's talked about so far.
yeah.
No, none at all. Be happy.
Not a problem.
The one thing I would point out then real quickly, and then I'll be quiet, is that Dan will ship the book directly if you order it from the website, so he can personalize it for you. So it'll come from him and not the publisher. So that's what I got.
And if you want me to write to my best friend, or to my bosom buddy or whatever, you just let me know.
Well, Dan can tell more about himself than I can as an introduction, but I do know that Dan has been around in this game for a very, very long time and is extremely dedicated to it. He's a prolific book writer. He also plays music on the side, as do I. And so, Dan, why don't you tell us about the book? Because I think your whole presentation is going to be talking about the book that Ken just mentioned.
Yeah, in fact, Craig, why don't I start the talk, and then I'm going to get into a few slides, show you what I'm talking about. Now that'll kind of help people understand what this book's all about. Why don't we do that?
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. Here we go. Are we up and at 'em?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I'm going to be. We were originally going to call this book "Beets in Your Bedroom," and we switched the title to "Lettuce in Your Living Room" or "Grow Lettuce in Your Living Room." But it's really about a revolutionary idea. You've probably all heard about hydroponics. Well, and if your impression of hydroponics is like mine, it involves a lot of pumps and circulating pumps and air pumps and all that. We're looking at a system of passive hydroponics, super simple, as you'll see very shortly. And we're going to grow under LED lights. And what I want to talk to you today about is 4 different techniques. I'll get to that in a second. But if you see that picture on the right, that's our patio in Gerald, Missouri. I'm out in Cortez right now. Bought a house out here, sealed it up tight. It was a real mess. I insulated the bejesus out of it and installed a 9 kW solar system on it. So we're out here right now, but still on the farm in Missouri. So that's a picture. And you can see in the very foreground, there's some basil growing in 5-gallon buckets. Those are passive hydroponics. They were started indoors under LED lights. And then in the summer, I just take them out on the patio, and we have basil coming out our ears. And that's just one of the things we're going to grow. So, or one of the things we're going to talk about. So we're looking at specifically what LED lights should you get, because that's something I want people to understand. And you guys are, most of you, I'm sure, are scientifically trained or know enough to realize that not all lights are the same, that not all LED lights are the same, not, an incandescent light isn't the same as a compact fluorescent or an LED light. And even among the LED grow lights, there's a wide range, and many of them provide a lot more energy in the wrong wavelengths, a lot of energy in the wrong wavelengths. So that's going to be a real important point I try to get across today, is that if you really want this to be successful, you need to pick a light that's fine-tuned to the needs of a plant, okay? And most of them aren't, the vast majority aren't. So let's get going here.
Did you say the vast majority are or are not? Are not.
Yeah. The vast majority. So, well, I'll get to that in a bit. So here's what I was going to tell you. This is my newest book. It just came out a week or two ago. Autographed copy available from the HRES website, our HRES website, and offering free shipping like everybody else these days. Here's one of our, I call him a disciple. Here's one of our grow operations. This is a movie director who lives in a little 500 square foot apartment in New York City. And he's built these lovely little shelves, and he's got a little indoor LED garden. He and his wife get all the lettuce and I don't know what else they want, just growing under these specific LED lights in this. And these happen to be 1-quart canning jars. And I'll tell you more about that later. Your system, you could grow in soil if you want to grow in soil. Here's one, I gave a talk a couple of months ago about Chinese greenhouses. This is a tomato plant growing hydroponically in my Chinese greenhouse. Look at the size of that thing. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So you can grow a wide assortment. This is in my my co-author, Vic. Vic is just an absolutely brilliant MIT engineer. I forget, he's got like 75 patents, and he's been working on plant lighting for quite a while. But here's the little plant he's got growing in his office, and a little tomato plant. Now this is growing in a self-watering container. You see that container off to the right? I'll explain what medium he uses, but he just gets tons of tomatoes off of these plants. So here's where we're gonna go today, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna talk about why grow food in your own home, and that there are a lot of reasons for this, and what you can grow indoors. And you'll be amazed at the variety of things that you can grow in your bedroom, in your living room, in your basement, in your kitchen, whatever room you've got. But we're going to focus on 4 types of passive hydroponics that we didn't invent them, but we've worked extensively with them to try to perfect these methods. And then I want to talk to you about understanding lights. It's really important, especially if you're going to try to do this commercially, because there's so much horrible lighting out there where people are buying lights and spending a ton of money on energy, and that energy is producing wavelengths of light that the plants don't use. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to be pumping energy into a light bulb and getting out wavelengths that the plant isn't going to use. Like, it's not going to use a whole lot of green light. That's why plants are green, because they reflect light back to you. So anyway, I would talk about what lights work really best. And then it really is pretty easy. And I should also warn you, it's extremely addictive. I started in this in 2017. I met Vic at a Mother Earth News Fair in Pennsylvania. I was speaking there and selling books, and he had this booth set up, and gave me a light and gave me a little pamphlet. I went home and immediately set it up, and now I've got them growing everywhere in the house. I have to move, empty out the guest bedroom. I got plants everywhere. So anyway, extremely addictive. This is just a one day's harvest from 5 tomato plants in February 2021, and Vic lives up west of Chicago. So grown indoors in a passive hydroponic system indoors. So we're seeing a lot of interest in growing food at home, especially after COVID. A huge amount of interest in people just saying, okay, let's see what I can grow. But there are other reasons to do this too. One is that you can grow your own food. It's right there. You can walk in the bedroom or wherever your setup is, pull off some tomatoes, pull up some carrots, cut some lettuce or kale or whatever you want, and take it to the kitchen and prepare it. It's obviously locally grown, so none of this transporting a vegetable, like lettuce or radishes, thousands of miles to get to your home. It's about as close as you can possibly get. You can eat very fresh and tasty food. It'll help in times of struggle like the COVID crisis, or in other times when there are food shortages. And for many of you, I suspect, I might be speaking out of turn, but I suspect that many of you have, if you're solar fans, you have this impulse to be more self-sufficient, whether it's in energy or any part of your life, water use, energy, food. This is an opportunity for you to increase your level of self-sufficiency and really help us create a more sustainable future. And what's interesting is it's a lot less expensive than buying food at the grocery store. Vic has run the numbers on it. Being an MIT engineer, he runs numbers on a lot of things. And according to his calculations, when he takes into account time and energy and everything, it's about 1/10 of the cost of buying vegetables from a grocery store. So what can you grow? You name it. Arugula, just the whole list. Some of these grow a little better than others, but I'm going to show you some of the products of our gardens. The better question, the list just goes on, and we've grown all these. We're not just saying this. We've grown all of these things indoors in a passive hydroponic garden. The better question is, what can't you grow? And there's not much that you can't grow hydroponically using passive hydroponics under LED lights. So here's where I'm going to go today, and I hope that some of you might get excited about this maybe after reading the book and decide to jump into these. But one is what we call Kratky jars, and I'll explain that. Bernard Kratky was the professor from the University of Hawaii who came up with this idea of passive hydroponics, and we have subsequently modified it to grow in 1-quart jars. He was growing in big tubs. So we call them Kratky jars in honor of his work. You can grow microgreens real easily hydroponic. There's some growing in my bedroom, my spare bedroom there on the right. Also, you can grow anywhere from 1 to 3 gallon buckets, and finally self-watering containers. The kale on the right side here, and I know you're probably all great fans of kale. I have to be careful when I talk about kale because not everybody's that fond of kale. But kale, Mike, this is a 10-day-old growth. These were planted 10 days ago. They're ready for harvest, and you can harvest in abundance. I typically on a single tray like this, I'll harvest 1/3 at a time. And then there's enough seeds in there that it'll grow back. So I'll get 6 harvests out of there. So that's where we're going today, lady. Oops, let's go here. Here's Bernard. We dedicate the book to him because of this work. And here's one of his
Dan?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a quick question. How do you want to handle questions today? Do you want people to press the space bar and ask while the slide is up, or do you want to wait till the end of the presentation?
I'm open to either. It's generally better to wait till the end. But
Okay.
I found that in all my presentations, the question is usually the next slide. So,
Yeah.
someone will say, well, who's Bernard Kratky? Well, here he is. So
Oh,
let's
write down your question to yourself so you don't forget about it, and then at the end we can handle them.
let's do it that way. Okay.
Sounds
You
great.
could also put the questions in chat.
Yeah.
There's a chat function at the
Okay.
bottom.
And when I see them, I'll address them. Okay. So here he is. He patented this system back in 1992. And it's non-circulating hydroponics. Okay, that's what's really important. No pumps, no water pumps, no air pumps, no messing around with nutrients. You just pour the liquid containing your nutrients in your container, and you're done. And so, as I said, we've adapted this to grow in wide mouth canning jars. Be really, really careful if you start this. Get the wide mouth canning jars. I know I've made that mistake. Walked into a store several times, just seen canning jars and grabbed them and went home and realized they were the small mouth jars. So make sure they're wide mouth, and I'll explain why real shortly. And you can grow, I don't know, hundreds of varieties, might be an exaggeration, but dozens of varieties of plants in your home. So what you're going to need is some 1 quart wide mouth canning jars, and you're going to get them online at various stores as well. One quart wide mouth, and you're going to need some 3-inch diameter plastic net pots. I'll show you what those are. Basically, it's a plastic pot that's going to fit. It fits perfectly in the wide mouth canning jar. You're going to need some hydroponic clay pellets. It's just little artificially made. They're real clay, but they're little round pellets, or some are oblong, but pellets, and that's going to be your grow medium. That's what you're going to put in the net pot. And then some nutrients. And we, Vic and I, we recommend, we've used a bunch of different types, and I like this Maxi Grow by General Hydroponics. It's a crystalline form. It's much easier to mix than the liquid form. So I would really just start there. You'll need 1 quart of water. Assume most of you can get a hold of that. And a dark sock. Anybody think why we want a dark sock? Well, the reason is because I realize you're all muted, but the reason for that is that you want to make sure that the jar itself is covered, the sides are covered, so that the light doesn't stimulate algal growth, because the algae will grow like crazy in that if you don't have it covered somehow. I like to paint my jars with spray paint, or you can use a dark sock. So all those unmatched black socks that you got in your drawer, here's a place to use them. I was shocked when I started this. I had so many dark socks, black socks that were unmatched, and I, for some reason, been saving them over the years. So I was able to start quite a few jars with those. And you'll need some seeds from your favorite veggies, and we'll get into that sort of thing. So here's everything you're going to use. Here's a 1 quart canning jar. Next, we're starting on the top left, and then there's a jar filled with nutrients, and then there's the net pot filled with clay pellets. And then you can actually you immerse that net pot in the 1 quart jar. Now, Vic likes to screw the tops on. I don't bother with that. It's not really necessary, because when I find it's actually more convenient not to screw the top on, because when you want to water, you can just pull that net pot up and add water to it. You don't have to unscrew anything. And the next picture is the 1 quart canning jar with the black sock to keep algae from photosynthesizing. And the bottom left is a progression. You'll see you'll have harvestable lettuce really in the 2nd week. You can start snipping off leaves in the 2nd week, certainly in the 3rd and 4th week. And that's the way we recommend that you harvest it, is don't cut the whole plant down, but just harvest, some of the outer leaves. And you can oftentimes, sometimes when we sell at farmers markets, sometimes I'll just cut the whole plant off at, just above the root level, and the whole thing will grow back. And we can typically get 2, sometimes 3 harvests off a single plant. The third harvest, it starts to get a little bitter. So, 2 harvests easily, but this is what you'll see. And I was shocked. This is when I started. I had 4 weeks between the Mother Earth News Fair in Pennsylvania, where I met Vic, and then Mother Earth News Fair in Topeka. And this is what I got. I mean, I walked in there with 4, I don't know, a dozen jars full of lettuce. Now look at the extensive root system that grows in there. The plant will grow down into the liquid. And I know if any of you are gardeners, you're thinking, wait a minute, Dan, plants need oxygen. If you look at soil, half of the volume of soil in your garden is air spaces. And you can kill a plant by saturating that soil. You basically suffocate it. You block it off from that air source, from that in particular oxygen. So what we're going to do here, and so what most active hydroponics growers do is they bubble. They have an air stone in their system, and they bubble air into the water at all times. What we found, or what Bernard found, is that if you just leave a little space at the top, look at that 4th jar over, you can't really tell that, but if you leave just a little space at the top, believe it or not, that's enough airspace, that's enough surface area that you can get enough oxygen to nourish those roots. So that's what's remarkable about this system. So simple, and these plants absolutely thrive. So here's some of the options. There are more options for nutrients. We like the Maxi Grow, and the Maxi Bloom is for plants that flower, like tomatoes and green peppers and things like that. I've used the Pure Blend Pro as well. I like that. That's what I started with, but it comes in a liquid form, and it's just harder to mix up. You're more likely to spill it. And so I've gone exclusively to Maxi Grow. Vic and I and a number of other people like to grow on a baker's rack. Get the biggest one you can get, and you can order them. You can pick them up at Lowe's and maybe Home Depot, but you can also order them online. And we grow on 3 shelves. This happens to be Vic's grow room, but you can see we space them apart. We usually start on the very top. We start plants. Well, it doesn't really matter where we start them, but you can see he's got all kinds of things growing in there. I don't have my glasses on, I can't tell you, but down the bottom, he's got basil, and it looks like there's maybe some dill and some more basil and a couple different kinds of lettuce and kale. So you can grow quite a lot of different things on your shelf. Now, anyway, there's so much to tell you about. Here's a close-up showing the growth. These plants are about 4 weeks old. Something like basil will grow for months on end. You just harvest leaves, and it will cut off the top, and it'll grow for months on end. Unbelievable. Here's another photograph of the variety of things you can grow under LED lights. It's just absolutely amazing. So, as I said earlier, it's cheap. It's a lot cheaper. It's about 1/10 of the cost of purchasing the same food in the grocery store. And you don't have to drive to the grocery store as well. So anyway, it's a really economical way when we calculate the cost of energy, the cost of nutrients and materials and everything. You're going to spend some money up front, but over the long run, it's going to cost you about 1/10 as much as buying produce in the grocery store. Okay, so that's the Kratky method. I would start there because it's probably the easiest. Or if you're a fan of microgreens, I would start growing microgreens. They're even easier. And we use these special trays. And I think I've got some broken down so you can see the components. But these are 2 micro. This is an experiment I ran. The plants on the left were started with nutrient solution from day one. The plants on the right were started just in water. And then after they got growing, I started adding nutrient. And much to my surprise, because seeds have a lot of the nutrients, they have all the nutrients they need for early growth. Much to my surprise, it just makes sense to start with nutrients from day one. Okay. There is just vivid proof of that. All right. So everybody, I don't know how much you guys know about microgreens. I didn't really know that much when I started growing these a couple of years ago. Like I said, I've been at this for 5 years, but basically microgreens are extremely nutrient dense. They're immature plants, herbs and vegetables. I mean, you can do microgreen broccoli, radishes, lettuce, kale, all kinds of things, but they are nutrient dense, highly nutritious, simple to grow, and unbelievably easy to grow. There are over 50 varieties of plants that you can grow as microgreens, and they grow very quickly. Within 7 to 10 days, you're harvesting microgreens. And of course, you can grow all year round. You can grow in very small spaces. If you only have a little room on one of your counters in your kitchen or a table in the corner or something. Their microgreens are extremely expensive to buy, but inexpensive to grow. And it can be really quite profitable. I ran some calculations and I'm trying to remember what they were. It's getting old, really sucks. It seemed like if it's in the book, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it was something like $10 worth of seeds produces about $500 worth of microgreens. So it's if you're thinking, if you provide food for a farmer's market or something, it's a nice little way to supplement your income. Very easy to plant, clean up, and they taste great. I just like growing them. It's very rewarding to grow. Here's what you'll need. You'll need this seed tray, and this is the only seed tray I would use. I've tried growing in soil, indoors, microgreens, and this is just so much simpler. Basically, it's a 3-part tray. It's got a clear lid, pretty clear lid. It's got a white tray that's perforated, and then a bottom tray, which is your nutrient reservoir. And then you need some kind of a tray paper. I don't mess with tray paper. I just cut a piece of paper towel and lay it down on the bottom and then lay the seeds on that. You'll need nutrients and an LED grow light. It's as simple as that. You can grow all kinds of things. Like I said earlier, kale and broccoli and cabbage. And when you start growing in microgreens, you're going to want to buy seeds in bulk. You don't want to buy the one packet at a time. You'll go bankrupt that way. But you can buy packages with thousands of seeds in them, and that's what you'll need. And it's not that expensive. You can grow radishes, Swiss chard, beets, arugula. All of them make really, really good microgreens. Now, where do you purchase seeds? Pretty much Johnny's is a great source. They even have a page on their website which lists all the seeds that they have available in bulk for microgreens. So check out Johnny's. There's other places as well. Fruition Seeds is another good source. It's a little, I don't want to say mom and pop, but they're pretty young people, so it's kind of hard to call them mom and pop. But here's the stuff. Okay, you place the tray on a flat surface. Now make sure this is the place where you're going to grow. Okay, you don't want to start it on the kitchen table and move it to a counter somewhere. So start on that surface, place the tray on a flat surface with the white tray, the perforated tray inside the green tray. Put a little paper carrier on that. Like I said, I just use paper towels. Then add the nutrients just to the level where it dampens the paper towel. Okay, you don't want to go over that because your seeds will get too much water and they'll start to rot. So you just want that paper towel wet. Okay, so add the nutrient mix, and typically we're adding about 1 teaspoon of nutrient per gallon of water. That's pretty much any product you use. That's about what you'll see the directions ask for. Okay, then you sprinkle the seeds by hand on the paper and put the cover on the tray, and you can leave it unlighted for several days. Plants will start to sprout within typically 2 or 3 days, and then you can turn the light on. Now, Vic just turns the light on immediately, but they don't need light for this first few days. So place the cover on the tray, and when they start to sprout, then turn the light on, or start with the light on already. And then within 7 to 10 days old, you've got some pretty good stuff to chew on. It's utterly amazing. Now you will have to remove that cover after a couple of days, because if the cover's there to keep the seeds from drying out, as you experienced gardeners know, the cover's there to keep that from happening. But as they grow, as shortly after they sprout, you'll want to take that off. Otherwise, the seeds will mold. You'll get this white mold on them. So you want to get that off within a couple days. And then if you need to add nutrients, I typically just I kind of leave one corner, like the bottom right corner, not shown here, but I'll leave one corner without seeds so I can pour nutrient in that corner. You want to make sure the trays are really level too, because if they're not, the water level won't be level. Okay. So here's lettuce growing in a microgreen tray. And I have so much fun with this. For lunch, I just go up to my microgreen garden or my indoor hydroponic garden. I snip off some leaves, throw some cheese on a tortilla, some leaves, and kale and some broccoli and lettuce, and might make myself a delicious sandwich for lunch. So that's the microgreen method. And honestly, guys, if you like microgreens, start here. This is easier than the Kratky jars and less expensive. If you buy these trays, don't quote me, but if you buy a 5-pack, I believe they're about $5 a piece. If you buy them individually, you'll pay more money, but a 5-pack will cost you about $5 a pop. Now, excuse me. Here's the third technique, and I like this one a lot. I wrote the chapter in the book on microgreens, and I wrote the chapter in the book on growing in buckets. I really love growing in buckets. This is a bucket of parsley that at the time this picture was taken, Vic and his wife had been harvesting this for 15 months. And I'm pretty sure it's still producing. I haven't talked to Vic in a couple of days, but we don't check up on his parsley plant very often. I'll call him today and find out. But that's pretty amazing. You've got this thing growing, producing a constant supply of what was that? Parsley. I was going to say broccoli. Now, why grow in buckets? The buckets will afford you the opportunity to grow larger quantities of vegetables. And I'll show you why. There's some special net pots that fit on there, and you can grow a lot more. And here's the real advantage, I think, is that you can grow taller plants like tomatoes and peppers and things like that. Eggplant. It grows just like everything else. It grows pretty quickly, still available year round. You can grow just in the corner of a room. If you can figure out a way to suspend a light over it, you can grow in small spaces. It's real easy to plant and real easy to clean up. And it's obviously reusable materials. You use all the materials over and over again. They're not going to cost you a whole lot. Obviously very rewarding to grow and pretty darn easy. So we grow in 1, 3, and 5 gallon buckets. I typically grow in 5 gallon buckets, just because the root systems, I think I've got a picture in the book. I'm not sure it's in the slideshow. The root systems are amazingly extensive. I mean, it'll fill that dang bucket. So I typically grow in 5 gallon buckets, although I do grow some in 3 gallon buckets as well, but mostly I grow in 5 gallon buckets. And then you can buy these larger net pots. There's 6, 8, and 10-inch net pots that fit in the top. This one on the right is a 3.5 gallon bucket with I can't read the slide there. What is that? A 6-inch? I can't read it. What does it say there? The
10-inch net pot filled with clay pellets.
Okay, thank you. There's your pictures of you guys over that part. Yeah, so that's a 10-inch pot. Now, you can just sprinkle arugula on there. You can sprinkle lettuce on there, and you have got yourself a little patch of greens to grow in. Basically, same steps are involved as planting Kratky jars. Okay, same exact steps. It's the same thing. It's just a bigger Kratky jar. But when you're growing stuff that's going to grow tall, like a green pepper or a tomato, or let's see, what else have we grown? Well, I can't think of that right offhand, but in any event, you're going to need some kind of a cage to hold that vegetable in place. Now we have found that we recommend in the book, we have found that the best tomatoes are the patio tomatoes. They don't grow too tall, but if you grow an indeterminate tomato, it'll grow up over the top of that and just, come down another 3 or 4 feet. So we've found that we don't mess with any indeterminates. We use these determinants, and what determinate means is it just grows to a certain height. So we recommend, Vic, I can't claim this, Vic has done all the experimentation on this, but he recommends certain varieties in the book, certain tomatoes that we found work really, really well in here. Some that we haven't, that haven't worked well. We want to keep you away from that. But you see, you can suspend a light from there and grow tomatoes. Here's a bucket of basil and lettuce on a baker's rack. And you can see you can grow multiple plants within each of those net pots. What do we got? Oh, one thing that we have had extraordinarily horrible luck with is spinach. Spinach is really hard to grow hydroponically. I also grow in aquaponics, and I can't get spinach to grow. It just doesn't like that environment. We found only one variety, and it's not, I don't even think it's a true spinach. It's called Malabar spinach, that actually will grow hydroponically. So please don't waste your time with spinach. And if you do, and you find a variety that works, please let us know, because we've tried all kinds of varieties with almost no luck at all. Here's, this is another one of our disciples. I guess that's kind of arrogant to call him a disciple. John, I didn't mean it that way, but John Warden's become a good friend and of both of us, and he grows very successfully. He grows cabbage in 1 gallon buckets in his basement. Now, there are other ways to do it too. There's also a picture from John Warden. Here's a 1 gallon 1 gallon bucket. And all he did in this case was drill the hole with a hole saw, 3-inch hole, and drop that 3-inch net pot in the middle. So that kind of works too. That works well too. So that's growing in buckets. What I like about buckets is they're very easy to move around. So I'll grow stuff indoors and then just take it out on the patio in the summer and turn the lights off and let the summer sun take care of it. And so I like being able to move stuff outdoors too. Now, the last technique is self-watering containers. And here are some that we use. I use these Hydrofarm tomato trellises. And there's a reservoir at the bottom that you fill with nutrients. And then what we use as a grow medium, I would not use planting soil or potting soil or any kind of garden soil. What we use, let's see, I'll get to that in a second. But basically, these are containers that allow us to add nutrients into a reservoir under the soil, under the grow medium. I shouldn't use the word soil. And then that nutrient water mix moves up by capillary action into the grow medium. So it provides it's a great way to grow. This technique will expand what you can grow enormously, tall plants especially. I find that this works better for tomatoes and beans and stuff like that than the 1 gallon, 2 gallon, 3 gallon buckets. I find that they just do better in these self-watering containers. So you can grow, I've grown peas and beans and cucumbers and all kinds of things. And what's really cool about this technique is it allows you to grow root crops. And I'll show you some of ours. Remember I told you spinach doesn't grow in a liquid medium. We can't get spinach to grow in any of the 3 previous techniques, but they love these self-watering containers. There's one in my house. Look at that spinach. And some of those leaves within a few weeks will be the size of your hand. So amazing way to grow spinach year round. And this is all from Vic's garden. Look at the carrots and beets and radishes that he's able to grow in his. And he's even grown peppers. And those are those fancy English cucumbers. So we're able to grow quite a few things in these self-watering containers. Now, here are the varieties that we find, or Vic has found, work really well. And they're from a company called Totally Tomatoes. And they're Totem, Sweet and Neat, Red Robin, and Tiny Tim. Those, and I've grown all, let's see, I've grown 3 out of those 4 and had good luck with them as well. So here's some of Vic's harvest. You can see this ripe tomatoes ready for the picking all winter long. What we grow in, like I said, I really don't recommend growing microgreens or growing in these self-watering containers with a soil mix, because you will get bugs. You'll get, especially if you're buying a potting soil, you'll get these little, what do they call them? Compost. It'll come to me in a minute, but you'll get these little tiny bugs. So stay away from soil mixes altogether. There's insects, eggs in there, and you'll pay the price. You'll be annoyed by it. So what we use is a 50-50 mix of coconut coir. That's the correct pronunciation. Some people call it coir, but the right name is coir. It's basically the husk of a coconut ground up, and we use it and make a 50-50 mix of that and vermiculite. And it's a great growing medium, an extraordinary growing medium. So that's what we recommend. Please stay away from potting soils, because once you get bugs in your system, they'll spread to other plants, and they're just a pain in the butt. So that concludes that part of my talk, where we're looking at the methodology. What I want to talk to you about is lighting from now on. We all know that plants need the right temperature and the right humidity and nutrients, but the light is the thing that we're most naive about, maybe even most ignorant about. We all know that plants use sunlight, the energy from sunlight, to take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and water from the soil to form all kinds of chemical compounds. We always think of it as sugars, but the plant builds everything, all of its amino acids and proteins and DNA and RNA and all of its starches. All of that comes from CO2 and powered by sunlight. And that's the magic of photosynthesis. Now, here's an interesting graph. This is, if you look at this on the bottom axis, you'll see wavelength. Visible light extends from about 400 nanometers all the way up to about 750. That's the what we call visible light. And if you break white light down into its components, you'll find that it consists of these various colors. Okay, so everybody probably knows that. And what we find, though, is that humans are most sensitive to yellow, green, yellow, and orange light. And that's probably why we see warning signs as painted yellow. But now plants will respond to this entire spectrum of light, but don't be fooled, because in reality, they really depend primarily on 3 wavelengths. One is red, green, and blue. And so we need to provide the proper wavelengths and the proper ratios. Now, we know that light's measured in a variety of things. If you have a lumens or a foot candle or a lux meter, don't bother, because it's not going to give you the information that you need. The light that plants use is called photosynthetically active radiation, or PAR. Okay, photosynthetically active radiation. And that's the light that plants are able to capture and use to make all those organic compounds. Okay, now we measure this photosynthetically active radiation in micromoles. I don't know how many chemists there are in this group, but we measure, and if you're not a chemist, it doesn't really matter. As a chemist, we always measure chemicals in micromoles, but we can also measure photons of light in micromoles. So the PAR meters that you might want to invest in we'll be measuring just PAR radiation, that photosynthetically active radiation. And they're going to, and the units are going to be micromoles of photons per square meter per second. Okay, whoops, going to do that one. And here's some PAR meters. I don't recommend you start off with one. They're not that expensive, like 80 bucks. I like them because I like to measure things. But what we do is we start plants out when we're starting a seed out. We like to give it, you know, when the seed starts sprouting, and microgreens are the same thing. Young seedlings, we give them, we want them to have a PAR in the range of 50 to 200, and about 14 to 18 hours of light a day. Now, as the plant starts to grow, once the leaves start to form on a lettuce plant, we like to boost that PAR up to between 200 and 500. And then same thing, 14 to 18 hours per day. And for fruiting plants or flowering plants, you want even more light. They need even brighter light. So this is in the book. So just keep that in mind. We're going to start the seedlings under not really intense light. And as the plants grow, we're going to increase the intensity of light, the intensity of PAR. And we can do that. Partly plants do this on their own. As they grow toward the light, they get exposed to brighter light. So that's what I generally do. You can also put them closer on a shelf or move the light closer to the plant. Now, we use exclusively LED lights, and I'm sure all you know, LED is it's a little plastic thing. It's a light emitting diode. It's a genius little electronic device. And these grow lights have allowed us to grow plants year round. Basically, LED lights have the advantage in that we can fine tune them. Avoid advertisements that say full spectrum light, because I don't want you to use a full spectrum light. With proper manufacturing, we can get the precise wavelengths. They're a lot cheaper to operate than some of the other types of lighting, even compact fluorescent or fluorescent lighting. They're safer to use because they don't produce as much heat. And here's the bottom line is they use less energy than other grow lights. So you get more for your money. They produce a lot less waste heat, and they can be used safely in confined spaces, and they're quiet, they're silent. Now, the other advantage of LED lights is they last for a long time, 50,000 to 100,000 hours. And an LED light can also be designed so it directs the light down onto your plants. They're very easy to install, lightweight, no mercury involved in those bulbs, and no bulbs to throw out. Obviously, a little bit better for the environment. And don't worry about this last thing. That's just a measure of efficiency. So we go back to this graph. And so PAR is actually a measure of everything between 400 and 750 nanometers. But it turns out that that's not quite enough information to really effectively grow your plants. This is optimal PAR. This is from a researcher, Dr. Namali Krishna from, oh goodness, I think it's Purdue University. And he found that this ratio of colors, not the big one here, but this is what optimizes plant growth. What he found is that by growing with these ratios of red, basically green and blue, those are the three major lights, that ratio is optimal, and it will increase the growth of lettuce, the productivity of lettuce by 250%. So don't waste your money on lights, full spectrum lights that do that, because you're giving way more blue and green and orange that you need. Get a light that does this, that provides this in the proper ratio. And so here's what I just told Dr. Kamali. The optimal ratio is red, 50 to 70% red, 20 to 30% green, and 10 to 15% blue. That's the ratio. Now, unfortunately, I don't know of any manufacturer except for Happy Leaf that has actually fine-tuned their lights to provide these ratios. So this is just repeating the same thing. You know, so there, as far as I know, not a single light manufacturer has fine-tuned their lights to this level, to this precision. And so you might be tempted to go out and buy an ordinary over-the-counter white light at Walmart or a local nursery, but you'll be using a lot more energy than you need to. Yeah, I don't know what this is. I forget what that is, but these are some of the other light sources. You can see this. I forget what this is. This is oh yeah, that's a white LED light. This is a full on the top left is a full spectrum LED light. And you can see it's not even close to optimizing the ratio for plants. And what that means is that you're putting a lot more, it's about the third time I've said this, but you're putting a lot more energy into that light than you're getting out in terms of useful wavelengths. Okay. So I don't know, skip that one. All right. So that's just a ratio. That's just a study showing the same thing. It's too complicated to get into now. So let's summarize things. It is possible to grow all sorts of greens, leafy greens, herbs, microgreens, and vegetables in your home. There are 4 different ways to do it that we've worked with. And the nice thing about your home is the temperature is usually pretty decent and humidity's fine for plants. It's going to be inexpensive and it's about 10% of the cost. Oops. But the real key thing here is that we want to get across is that properly designed LED grow lights are what you really want to get. If you want to get the most bang for your buck and the best growth, the best productivity, you want to get a properly designed, a properly adjusted, fine-tuned LED lights. And there's only one company that's done that so far, and that's my co-author's company called Happy Leaf. And you can check them out at happyleafled.com, and I'll show you that website shortly. So it's a lot of fun and rewarding. It's absolutely addictive. It's crazy addictive. When you start harvesting, it's extremely addictive. But get that ratio of red, green to blue correctly. Be really careful when you're looking at lights online. You can buy some really cheap Chinese lights, but they're oftentimes not well made, and they don't give you the proper ratio of red to green to blue. So be really careful. It's, on all LED, not all LED lights are created equal. So high quality lighting, and especially if you're doing this commercially, it makes so much more sense. And Vic's selling lights to a lot of indoor commercial growing operations, including hemp and marijuana, but a lot of people that are producing microgreens for market and vegetables for the market. Anyway, so keep that in mind. Again, here's our new book. It's full color, full of wonderful illustrations and photographs, and you can order it on the website. And if you can buy a copy today from HRES, it's also available at happyleafled.com and also available on Amazon. If you want to learn more about this technique, Vic's website, happyleafled.com, has tutorials and short videos. You might want to even just check out a couple of those videos. There's another Fruition Seeds, Petra, the gal who co-owns the business, she has a really neat microgreen short course, really, really neat. And she sells all these Happy Leaf lights as well. Okay, so that's all I've got to say, my friends, and I'd like to open it to questions. Should I stop sharing screen now?
Why don't you leave it up?
Yeah.
In case you need to refer to something.
Good idea. Good idea.
You can flip it over.
Any questions that I've raised in your minds?
I'll start it off by, and again, if you want to talk, just hit your space bar. But this is an absolute phenomenal project for kids and school teachers.
Oh, yes.
We ought to figure out some way, and this is a great presentation, by the way. We ought to figure out some way of spreading this presentation to school districts so that they can buy the book and learn about this stuff, because this is really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, in fact, Vic just gave a talk in Illinois a couple weeks ago, and there were 25 school teachers who all do some kind of growing in the classroom, and they were so excited about it. They were absolutely thrilled and to learn about this.
Yeah. Other questions?
How much do the LED lights cost, and how many of them do you need?
Well, to start out, you could you could start something really simple. I started immediately with a baker's rack with 3 lights. The lights are about $100 a piece. And one of the nice things about the LED lights from Happy Leaf is they have a separate power unit. And that's the weak point. If it goes, they're only about $10 to replace. So if anything's going to go bad over the next 10 years, that'll be it. So you can just get a new one. A lot of lights have that transformer built into the light itself. So when it goes bad, you toss the whole thing out. So the lights are about $180 to $100 a piece. And so that from now, and you can buy, like I said, you can buy lights at half that price online. And I've done it. I went out because when I first met Vic, I thought, oh yeah, what's he know? So I started buying some of these cheap lights for half the price, and many of them were just trash, and none of them provided that proper ratio. So I would start out, I mean, if you're interested, I would start out with a single light. And if I remember correctly, Vic sells a 17-inch light and a 33-inch light. So I would start off either with a 17 or 133-inch light and set up a small a grow area in some part of your house, maybe on a kitchen counter or something like that, and just see how you like it.
Very interestingly, I'll add this. This is just a weird coincidence. When I was in high school, junior high and high school, I did a science project with a friend whose father was a botanist at Purdue University, and he was professor there. And we did a science experiment for a science fair that used different light spectrums to grow plants, and then presented which ones worked best to grow plants. Right. Very interesting. And that was in mid 60s, mid to late 60s. So yeah.
That's really a good point. One of the things that I meant to mention is that a lot of the lights that you buy on the internet will give you kind of a bluish purple, a bluish red purple light. And the plants look ugly as sin. One of the things that Vic has done, I'm going to go back to this slide here. One of the things that Vic has done is he's added enough other colors to make the plants appear normal, not like they're from outer space. So you get these gorgeous plants. His first generation, the plants were kind of purplish, but so these are adjusted too, so the plant looks normal.
One more question. Have they been tested for nutrient value? What is their nutrient value compared to other in-ground grown vegetables?
That's a good question. I'm not aware of anybody having tested these at this point for nutrient levels, and it's a question I have in my own mind. I've been eating them for years, and other than this tremor in my hand, I have no problems whatsoever. So, no, I mean that's a really good question, and I don't know that. I grow aquaponically too, with fish as my nutrient source, and I've always had that question, but I've never found a study. People who are proponents of this say, oh yeah, they're just as nutritious. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I have a feeling they're pretty damn close. So if anybody is a chemist and wants to do that, we'd love to get that data.
You showed a medium in one of your later slides, and I also assume that the pellets are a medium. And so where do you use the pellets as the soil medium, or as the growing medium, and where do you use the other ladder slide medium?
Okay. The one that I have up in front right now is that mixture of coconut coir and vermiculite, and that's only used in the self-watering containers. We use pellets in the Kratky jars, and we use pellets in the buckets. And we use no medium whatsoever in microgreens. So this medium is for self-watering containers. It replaces soil. We use the pellets for Kratky jars where we're using net pots. And we use the pellets in those 1, 3, and 5 gallon buckets. And then, like I said, the microgreens, zero. We don't use any medium whatsoever. These plants are growing right on top of that paper towel.
And you mentioned the self-watering devices. How do they? What is the mechanism by which they self-water?
Well, there's a fairly large. It's about a 2-gallon reservoir in those big tomato, those tomato ones. Those tomato self-watering containers I showed you, the clay-colored ones. There's about a 2-gallon reservoir. And if you look, Craig, if you look at the bottom of it, there's a partition wall, a perforated partition wall between the reservoir and the growth medium. Okay, but if everybody can see me, the partition wall does this. It goes down so that it dips down into that liquid, and then the water, the nutrients in the water and the water just move up by capillary action.
So they wick up.
It wicks up, exactly. And Craig, when you first start, though, when you put your seeds in, what I do is I mix the solution, put the coconut coir and the vermiculite in there, and fill the nutrients up, and it'll start moving up fairly quickly. But I also, when I first seed, I'll spread some along the top just to make sure those seeds are kept wet. And now when it comes to the clay pellets, what we do is we basically fill that jar right up to the neck, where, you know, when the jar kind of turns in like that. Yeah. So right up to that, right after where it begins to turn, that's as far as we fill that jar. And then we drop the net pot into that, and the water just moves up naturally. You know, it just floods that area, and it leaves the top layer of pellets are kind of dry. So you sprinkle your seeds in there, and then put a few more pellets on top, and but I typically start with a wet pellet, so it's already got moisture in it. So you just basically drop that in there, sprinkle your seeds just right above the water level, and then maybe put a few more pellets on top. And then as soon as those leaves start, as soon as those seeds start sprouting, the root will drop down into the liquid, and there'll be plenty of moisture for it. Now, what you'll find when you first start is the first week, they don't need any replenishment. But once those plants get growing, that second week, you might, at the end of the week 2, might have to add more liquid to it. And then by week 3, and especially if it's warm, like in the summer, you might have to water it a couple times. But it's really easy. Just use a watering bucket with a long, narrow spout on it, and it's very easy to replenish the water level in there. And now once the plants start sending roots down into the bottom, then we don't fill it up so much. We only fill it up to the bottom of the net pot. So there's plenty of air in there for the roots.
Yeah.
Do you have any trouble with hard water? Does you get mineral buildup in your system?
You know, we have extremely hard water on our farm in Missouri, and
Dan, you're muted there.
I was trying to let somebody in, and I hit your thing by mistake.
Okay. So to answer that question, is we have extremely hard water in Missouri, very, very hard water. We're pulling out of limestone aquifers. And in addition, we have a very high pH. It's 8.3, 8.4. Plants, ideally, we like to grow in a pH of around 7, okay? Somewhere right around 7. So, the nutrients are emptied from that system quickly enough that the calcium doesn't build up. So, I mean, you'll fill the jar and 2 weeks later, it'll be empty, fill it again maybe on week 4. And then by then you're harvesting, and you might harvest for a couple of weeks. And at the end of that period, then you just clean out the jar and start over. You might have a tiny bit of, mineral deposit, the calcium carbonate deposit, but I'm really fussy about pH. I like to keep the pH at around 7. And what I've found is that when we start with a pH of about 8.3 or 4, and when we add the nutrients to it, that's slightly acidic. So that brings it down almost 1 full pH unit. And so I will also add a little bit of pH down. It's a chemical it's used for swimming pools and hot tubs. I had what is it, like a 1/16 of a teaspoon per gallon. That brings the pH down to about 7. Vic doesn't mess with pH at all. He's an electrical engineer, and it's chemistry stuff. He doesn't like that. Doesn't worry about it. He never worries about it. If you're using city water, the pH is probably going to be pretty close to neutral. If you're in an area like you guys are probably in a high limestone area and you're out in the country, your pH is probably a little bit higher, and it would behoove you to drop that pH a little bit through the nutrients and by adding some pH down.
Yeah.
Now, when you're done, say with a Kratky jar, I then rinse it out with hot water. I'll scrub it. I'll scrub the net pots. I take the pellets out and immerse them in hot water and start all over again. Sometimes if you use the pellets for a long period without cleaning them, they'll start to build up algae and they'll get kind of cruddy. You really don't want that to happen. You want to keep them as clean as possible. Don't worry about sterility. These don't have to be, don't go crazy and make these sterile environments. Your plants aren't going to suffer, but you want to just keep the algal growth down.
Okay.
And Dan, a question for you. I've grown cherry tomatoes indoors before hydroponically, and they grew great, but they didn't seem to have any flavor. Do you have any tips for that?
Well, and I don't know, were you using a nutrient that was for, you start them off with a Maxi Grow, a formulation that has just the right ratio of nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus. And then 2 weeks before they start to flower, and how you determine that, I don't know. But when they start flowering, you want to change it to a bloom preparation that has a higher concentration of phosphorus. And we find our tomatoes are absolutely delicious. And it could be the variety. Were you growing in soil, or were you growing? Oh, you said hydroponically, right?
Hydroponics. It was one of the AeroGarden kits, but it was the same nutrients throughout, so it didn't change. So it was part of it. That
might have been part of it, and the other part may have been the variety that you used too. I don't know, but ours are extremely tasty. We had no problems whatsoever with that. And
then a quick comment on the spinach. I did finally have luck. I had so much trouble before, but my trick was just 1 seed per pod. So there's 2. They seemed like they rotted each other, but only a few of them still sprouted. It seems like getting them started is the tough part. And I used a separate sprouter, and then just transferred the seeds that sprouted and worked well 1 year.
Yeah, and what were you starting them in?
This is hydroponics as well, just a grow sponge and nutrients with circulation air pump.
And do you know the variety? Because I have tried several varieties. I've just had no luck either aquaponically or hydroponically. I've even started them in those little plugs and started them. How did I do that? Must have been like in a soil type environment, and then tried to move them to the aquaponics, and they just don't thrive for some reason. Well, go ahead.
I wish I could tell you the variety of the seed packets in my motorhome in Colorado right now.
Okay.
Maybe Craig can go stop by my motorhome and take a look.
yeah. Next time you get there, would you text me or email me? I'd love to know what you found, because it's just been so frustrating. I love fresh spinach. I just absolutely love it. And the only way we've been able to grow it, as I said earlier, was in this self-watering containers, and they grow like crazy in those.
Yeah, and then just one other quick question. Don't want to monopolize all your time here. And
Oh,
I travel with a motorhome most of the year, so I like having a garden that I can transport.
Yeah.
I've had hydroponics like next to my motorhome, put them in the motorhome, drive to the next spot, but take it back out.
how cool is that?
But as far as like a pump system, growing leafy greens and flowering vegetables, fruiting vegetables at the same time, would that not be recommended because you almost need two different tanks, vessels of water with the different nutrients at different times?
I'm not sure. You're talking about a circulating system?
Yeah, I can share the screen right here maybe, but actually it's not allowing me at the moment. But yeah, circulating system, outdoors in this case, but using hydroponic nutrients, but trying to grow lettuces and leafy greens at the same time that I was growing tomatoes and strawberries.
In the same mix.
Right.
Yeah, you'll run it, they'll be fine. They probably would be fine. I've never done it, but they'd probably be fine until the tomatoes started flowering. And then their nutrient demands change. So at that point, they're going to need more potassium and phosphorus to thrive. So that would be the one disadvantage of having a single system with both types in it. Now, that said, in my aquaponics system, I do grow lettuce and a lot of kale, and occasionally I have a tomato plant in the same system. It's a 4-tank system. I buy these big 275-gallon totes, and I chop the top off of one, and that's where my fish reside. And then I cut the other ones in half, and each one of those is for growing. But so I've been able to grow in those, and haven't had great luck with peppers, but I've had pretty good luck with tomatoes growing in the same nutrient mix that the vegetables are growing. But that, that's, I can't even tell you what that mixture is, because all I measure in there is nitrates and ammonium nitrites and nitrates. So I don't measure any of the other nutrients. But I would think you'd want to separate the two, to be honest with you.
Okay, it might be my next experiment. So.
Okay, let me know.
All right, thanks.
When you find that spinach seed, I'll get let me know. I'd love to know what worked.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions?
What are the pellets made out of? What are they made out of?
It's actual clay. They have some kind of a furnace, and they liquefy clay. And, you can separate clay out of a soil and make a liquid suspension of it. And then they shoot it into a furnace. And so they just makes these little, they're not quite the size of a marble. What are they? Maybe they're a little bigger than a jelly, somewhere between a jelly bean and a marble. But they're really kind of cool. And they're, you can buy a 10-pound bag. It's fairly inexpensive.
Where do you get them? Where do you buy them?
Just go online and let me pull the book out. I'll tell you the ones that we really like. But you can go online. Where else? You can go online and buy anything. Let's see what the pellets. I've used a couple different varieties, and I apologize for not remembering all this stuff. It's getting old. Just sucks big time. Let's see, which ones do I use? There's one brand that they're really round and uniform, and I always buy those. It should be in the book here somewhere. Where are they? Oh, for God's sake, I don't have the.
Craig, are there other chat questions? I think I see, like, my thing says there are 3 chat questions, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
I think those were, let's see. Well, if anybody had a chat question that hasn't been answered, just go ahead and hit your space bar and talk. That'll be easier than me trying to find one that hasn't been answered.
Yeah, there you go.
I thought tomatoes required pollinators. Is that right? And I know the greenhouses in Iceland have bumblebees they use as pollinators.
Right. Well, you can be the bumblebee. What we do is we just vibrate the tomato, every once in a while, we'll just kind of vibrate the branch. And so you become the pollinator. So it's really quite easy. You don't get any pollen or nectar to feed on, but you can self-pollinate. Some people have these big shaker systems and they'll have a bunch of plants together and they'll shake them. Houseflies will help pollinate. Some plants will actually self-pollinate. When the leaf closes at night, it'll pollinate itself. That forces the pollen onto the the pistil, that female part of the flower. So definitely you need to shake them once in a while, rattle them a little bit. I found, like in my greenhouse, I grow a lot of celebrity tomatoes, and they seem to self-pollinate really well. I don't mess with them at all, and they seem to self-pollinate. So, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, tomatoes don't need insects for pollinators. What they're using the bumblebees for is a natural way of shaking the plant.
Yeah, they're buzz pollinators.
You know, because they're self-pollinated, they just drop down. So wind does it, movement, like you said, the vibration. So the bumblebees are nature's vibration.
Yeah,
but they are not actually pollinating the tomato.
Yeah, I wrote that's a good point. I misspoke there when I was talking about nectar, but yeah, and I write about this in the book. They're buzz pollinators, and that buzzing is the vibration. So you can be just like John Belushi back on Saturday Night Live. You can be the little bumblebee. Good point. Thank you.
I was going to say to the board members that are here, we probably have a quorum in terms of board members, but we should have Dan join us at our next board meeting so we can kind of brainstorm ways to get this and other books out and ways to do that. I think that'd be an interesting project for us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to put together a presentation or do some presenting or train some people to present and go out to high schools.
Yeah.
And I know Vic would too. He's very passionate about it. The two of us would be really happy to kind of get this idea out.
Okay.
I know, elementary schools and schools, I don't know about the high schools, but I volunteer in elementary schools. Our goal is to get kids outside and away from being inside.
Yeah.
So the idea of having this inside is kind of contrary to what the whole movement with what it's the last child something rather than
well, a lot the counter to that is a lot of the school year is when you can't grow plants. So this would be something that you could do during the winter or the late fall, early spring.
Yeah, it's just so nice to have something green around when it's all white and brown outside.
Yeah.
And kids love watching things grow. I mean, my experience is kids just get the biggest hoot out of watching stuff grow and then pulling that carrot out of the ground, and picking that tomato. So I do understand the need to get kids outdoors. This, by the way, we grow a lot under LED lights and then transplant to our gardens. Or
right.
not Vic so much, but I do. I mean, I grow a lot of stuff under LED lights and then move it into my garden in the springtime. So that could work as well. One of the problems that schools have with growing is that someone just mentioned that is the kids are out during the grow season. They're not there. So, I know there are a number of schools around here that have greenhouses, but the kids aren't around, they're growing in the greenhouse all year round, but they're not outside to tend gardens in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions,
Sure.
But first a little bit of serendipity. I happened to throw on my Land Institute sweatshirt this morning because it was a little cool. And your whole presentation on lighting just brought me back to when the Land Institute first was opening their brand new greenhouse and took us on a tour and walking into this gigantic room full of all these tuned LEDs where they were growing their seedlings. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
My question, I have two questions. The first one is you mentioned avoiding algae with the dark socks and bugs and stuff. Are there any hints about other things to avoid? I'm thinking of the E. coli outbreaks that happen in commercial microgreens or harmful funguses.
Yeah. You know, the growth cycle between seeding and harvesting is so short with this system. There's not a lot of time for things to go wrong. We've had a little problem. I've had a little problem with overlighting and burn leaves. There's some pictures in the book. There's a picture in the book that shows that. The only problem that I've had in the 5 years that I've been growing this way is bugs. And that's because I was dumb enough to have some stuff growing in soil. And then in the same room, on the same racks, and the little compost gnats, I guess they're called, they would grow and they would spread to my aquaponics or to hydroponics plants. So that's the only issue I've had. Well, and so the solution for me is just don't grow any soil anywhere near these plants, because if you're bringing in potting soil, there'll be seeds in there. What I've tried to do to prevent that is I hang the yellow sticky cards down on each shelf, and I use that as a monitor to see if any bugs are appearing. And but the best thing is for me is just to avoid any soil growing indoors. Now you will run in, if you in microgreen growing, you will get a root rot. What they call it? What's that word they use? How do they call it? There's a special weird term for it. But
starts with a P. It starts with a P.
Anyway, it'll come to me.
Anyway.
Yeah, there, you know, if you overwater and you have too much water in that tray, you'll get little sections. It'll start to rot. The roots will start to rot. And then it's time to immediately get those out of there or harvest everything else and get them out of there. That's the only, I don't think Vic's had any problems with pathogens. Since he stopped growing with soil, he's had no bug problems. And I think that's pretty much it.
E. coli is from animal manures, wildlife, waterfowl, pig farms, cattle, manure running. So E. coli is not going to be an issue at all.
Yeah.
My second question is understanding the light mixtures. So for example, I live in a patio home that has glass windows that are very nice, but they're a mixture of indirect and direct light at various times of the year. And I don't have as much space that is enclosed away from windows. So the question would be, is it wise or not wise to mix the light of exterior natural light coming in and grow lights at night or something like that? Is it better to have one or the other? And can you do this kind of thing without LEDs if you put it right by the patio window? And seasonally, if you want to take things outside to the patio, what is the trick about when to do that?
Okay, let me start the first one. I live in a solar home, passive solar. So as you all know, that at that low angle, when that sun goes down, or it starts to the solar angle begins to decrease after the summer solstice, then light starts streaming in that window. So oftentimes what I do, and we have these huge 17-inch thick walls in our house, super insulated R50. So we have these deep window wells. So what I do in the winter is I actually put a lot of my plants on the windowsill, on the south facing windows. And I leave them there. Did I say summer? I meant winter. During the, sorry, I get those mixed up, but some, fall, winter, and spring, when we've got a lot of sun streaming in those windows, they do really, really well. So I'll start them on my under LED lights, and I'll shift them over there. And then, of course, because we have the proper overhang during the summer, there's very little direct light coming in. And that's not enough for these plants. So they have to either go out on the patio or back on the shelf. So yes, they do really, really well. The second question you asked is, is it advisable to combine the two? Absolutely. I grow tomatoes in the living room in self-watering containers. And what I'll do is when the sun's coming in during the off season, the fall, winter, and spring, I'll use all the solar energy I get. Mind you, that house is in Missouri, so there's not a lot of direct sunlight in January and February, sometimes March. So I'll leave them by the window and during the day, and then about 4 or 5 o'clock, I have the LED light on a timer. It comes on and it irradiates the plant for another 2 or 3 hours, provides radiation. So yeah, combine them, absolutely. And I forgot your third question.
Moving things outdoors, when's the right timing to do that if you're going to take them out to the patio?
I wait till it gets warm, and then I harden them too. So if they're growing indoors, like I'll move my basil and my tomatoes and other things, sometimes lettuce. I'll move that outdoors, but I'll put it. We have a covered patio. It's half covered, so I'll take them out there when it's getting warm. When the nights aren't much colder, 50, 60 degrees, or some 50 degrees maybe. I'll move them out, but I won't put them in direct light for a while. I'll just leave them under the shaded portion, and then I'll move them out slowly. I'll move them out for a few hours, and within a week or so, they're out in bright sunlight. So you do have to harden, just as if you're growing in a greenhouse, you want to harden those plants before they go out in your garden. But it makes for an absolutely lovely patio. I mean, to have all this greenery on your patio. You saw that picture of ours at the very beginning. I go out there and read. I go out there and read in the summer, and that's just half our patio. It just makes for just a delightful experience. Very, I think green's good for the soul, good for the mind, good for the heart. Now, one thing that you will have an issue with in the summer is when it rains, or anytime it rains, is that those pots will fill up, and that's when it's diluting your nutrient solution. And also, if it rains a lot and it fills that bucket all the way to the top, your plants will suffocate. So you've kind of got to watch that. And when I know rain's coming, I'll pull them back under the cover, so they don't overfill. And if that water level goes all the way to the top of the container, there's no area for oxygen exchange at the surface. So that'll be an issue. You just want to watch that. I've had stuff die. What was it? I forget, my wife will remember. I had some basil that was just going gangbusters. And then it rained for a few days, and I didn't think to go out and dump the extra water off. And I had a basil plant that just died within a couple of days. It just didn't like that at all. It's just not enough, like I said, surface area to keep that oxygen level in the water up.
Does that suggest on some things that you could just transplant into a soil pot for outside and then let it go when winter comes and use the apparatus that you have to start something new?
I've never tried that. I've never, they're in a net pot. Excuse me. They're in a net pot. If you did, it would be tricky because the root system is enormous. I don't have, let me see if I can find it in the book, but I don't have the picture on my slideshow. It would be really hard to move that plant out and get its roots nestled in the soil. You would be just amazed at the root systems that grow. I think, I don't know for sure if this is true, but I think that in a hydroponic system, roots grow more extensively. But look at this. I see if you guys can see that. Look at that root system there. That's in a 5-gallon bucket. And that's what was that? It was I forget what that plant was. I think that was a cucumber growing in there. It'd be really hard to transplant that to soil. If they were really young, you could probably just put the net pot right in the soil itself. But once those roots grow out, I think it'd be pretty challenging to get them in there.
Yeah. Roots that grow in water have a different formulation than roots that grow in soil, mainly because of the oxygen. They grow to use oxygen differently, and so they don't. You can't move one to the other.
Bernard actually told us that. Bernard Kratky said that if you look carefully at the roots, they are a different structure. I don't know whether they'd adapt. I've gone the other way. I was teaching at a little college in Iowa, and we set up they had lettuce growing out in an organic garden, and yet they had a little fish pond in their greenhouse. And so I just set up 2 Tupperware tubs, and I pulled those plants out of the soil and dropped them in the net pots. And within a couple of weeks, I had these incredible plants. So that worked really well. Just try it, just try it and give me a call.
Well, several times I bought seed starts at Home Depot or some gardening store.
Yeah.
For peppers, cilantro, different plants, and just taken a sprayer and washed all the dirt off as much as I could. Then put them in a pot, put the clay pellets around it, and it's worked great.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. I would want to just warn everybody, my house, I lived in Evergreen in a straw bale, rammed earth tire, solar home, off grid for many, many, many years. I still own it. It's rental property now, but we had a 40-foot indoor planter. And one thing I learned is be really careful about bringing stuff in from greenhouses because of white flies. So I would just warn you on this system is grow everything yourself. Those white flies that were imported accidentally from India, I believe, can become a real nightmare. I got a neighbor brought me when I first moved in there, before I planted anything, a neighbor brought me a little tomato plant as a housewarming present. And I looked it over and I saw a few white flies. I killed them, but then I planted it. And sure enough, 3 or 4 months later, if you shook that plant, it was just this cloud of white flies. And then they spread everywhere. And I had a full garden growing inside. So I stripped everything out of there, let it sit for 3 months and started again. And sure enough, they came back because I had missed a little bit of weeds in one corner of the grow bed, and they had lived on there, and they basically reinfested my garden. So I stripped the whole thing again, everything. This time I had not a weed left out there. And I was successful after that at keeping control of whiteflies. So just a thing to be really careful about, even bringing nursery plants into your home near your aquaponics system. Those whiteflies are a pain in the butt. They are just a nightmare, and they suck fluids out of the plant, and the plant will do really fine. And then all of a sudden it's just, there'll be thousands of them on there, and it's more than the plant can handle.
Well, I guess that brings the question, when you bring your plants in from your patio, what do you have to de-whitefly them?
No, we find that the plants do better on the patio with insects because I think there's more predatory insects. This is a phenomenon I can't say with scientific certainty, but the plants do really, really well out there. And it's probably because it's a diverse ecosystem and there is predatory insects. I don't think the birds really do much to control bugs, but we don't clean them off. How do I say this? And it seems like they're much more vulnerable. My greenhouse is a nightmare for bug control because it's I have a Chinese greenhouse. It's just a constant struggle with aphids and primarily aphids and spider mites, and that's just a neat, easy environment, and they just thrive indoors. But outdoors, I just seem to have so much better luck on the patio growing in the summer. And I think it's that diversity thing, look at all the plants we've got out there. It's going to attract all kinds of bugs, and hopefully they're what keep the aphids, et cetera, under control.
Very good.
All right.
Well, folks, this has been extremely interesting, and I know that I'll be watching the video with my wife later on to see if I can get us doing the same thing. Are there any other questions before we say goodbye?
How soon will it be online?
Sometime this week.
Yeah, most likely within the next week or so, when Craig will get the video to me, and then I'll get it on the website. And
okay, thank you.
Don't forget, you can go to the website to order the book and have it personalized by Dan. And that's basically the other thing.
And I'll be sending as soon as we get it up on the website, I'll be sending out an email to invite the rest of our friends and members who didn't get a chance to see it, that they can take a look at it online.
Cool. Very cool. Keep on growing, friends. Appreciate being invited to speak to you guys again. It's always great to talk to solar enthusiasts. There
Yeah.
not enough of us. We're an important component of our society, and I love you dearly. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Dan.
A pleasure,
All right.
Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Pleasure.
you.
You're quite welcome. Quite welcome.
Bye-bye, all.